very much indebted to, who has helped out tremendously along the way. Dr. Caitlin Dooley has been supportive, has been inspirational, has been exemplary as far as a leader. So I want to let you all hear from her, because she can give you all a little bit more context as far as what we're doing at GaDOE.
Hi, everyone. Bryan, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for being here. This is such an important topic for our state. I'm Caitlin Dooley, Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning at the Georgia Department of Education. That's a really long way of saying I just really care about kids, and I really want to make sure that our state gets this right. I can give you a little line of sight to where we are as a state. Now, I've been in my position under State Schools Superintendent Richard Woods since 2015. When I started that year, we had the first convening of the Computer Science Task Force, and that was under then Governor Deal. And he had assigned a bunch of people to be on this task force, and they asked us to really create a computer science track for students so that we could fulfill the jobs that were open in our state. When I ended up taking the position, I was able to hire Bryan. At that time, we had 33 teachers across the entire state. Now, note that we have over 110,000 teachers and educators in our state. We serve almost 1.8 million students. So 33 teachers is not enough. And so we pulled together a collaborative endeavor called CS4Georgia. That's Computer Science for Georgia. And Bryan has worked with a very large and invested team to focus in on what's going to be the fulcrum point for achieving our goal of producing this many students. And we decided it was going to be educators. So we now have over 400 certified educators. So recognize that rate of growth from 33 to over 400 in such a short period of time. We also have over 83,000 students now who have enjoyed taking a class, whether in CTAE or in the general education content areas related to computer science. It's 83,000. When I first started, we were, well below 10,000. So just understand what that rate of growth means and what it will mean in your districts. Part of the reason why we have the workshop tomorrow is because when you're expanding this fast in a state, at the rate that we're expanding, at the scale that we're expanding, we really have to do some coordination. So tomorrow's workshops are going to set up district leaders, and I mean that in a distributed leadership sense, so that they can coordinate across teachers, across counselors, across IT professionals, across principals, so that they can make sure that we can continue this quick and efficacious is the word that comes to mind, but high quality pace in improving our infrastructure for preparing students for the computer science in their world. Now, along with the kudos that we have for our team, I want to remind us all that computer science is not just for people who become computer scientists. And I always remind us of this because when we were inventing the discipline of something like mathematics, there was no such thing prior to it becoming a discipline and people coordinating and grabbing onto this field of study that was going to be a collection of ideas that in our educational system we would be passing on to someone else. So we're in that process right now with computer science, and that's going to take some coordination, definitely, and communication by you to bring this word out. And the reason this is so pertinent right now is we have got to make sure that our students understand what it means to grow up in a digital society. And I don't just mean that they have an Instagram account and they're digital natives. No. If it were the same for mathematics, we would assume that because they get to use mathematics in their everyday, we don't have to teach it. We'll just assume that they're native to mathematics because they use money and maybe they learn to count. It's not the same when you're really trying to prepare someone for a society where this is a really important part of their society. We're actually asking them to do deeper learning than just someone who has a circumstantial encounter with computer science. So what's happening in our state right now? Many of you have heard of Senate Bill 108 that was passed last year. It mandates that by 2025, all schools offer computer science across all grade levels. The other thing that's happening in our state is we have several local or regional innovation collaboratives. You may have heard of like Georgia's Innovation Corridor. Our Lieutenant Governor has a technology innovation collaborative, and we are trying to get these clean jobs into Georgia in order to support our infrastructure. And then finally, the other thing that's happening is simply society itself is changing. No matter what job you do, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but no matter what job you do, you will have to understand how computing and computers work. I always tell the story of my parents who have had to grow up and understand it after they went to school. And for many of the people who are new to computing because they did not grow up with the internet, it takes a lot of cognitive dissonance and abstraction in order for them to truly understand how they work. And it's not always easy for someone who hasn't had the exposure early on in their K-12 experience to truly get it. So without a lot of cognitive effort. So what we're trying to do is really wrap computer science into the everyday concepts, ideas, skills, and knowledge of multiple classes, and then also make explicit what it means to know and understand how computers work, whether we're talking about data and data systems, databases, networking and the internet, software and hardware production, engineering, simple engineering, computing engineering, and then also the impacts of computing, how computers impact our society and how our society impacts computing. So those are the general framework pieces for computing as a discipline. And as you start to think through, like, what does this mean for you and your day-to-day, I have two asks. One is that you talk to the people with whom you work and you come to an agreement around how your local district is going to address computing. Have a very real conversation about how computing is going to impact all of their students' lives. And then come up with a coherent plan for how you're going to develop the learning conditions so that students will love computing. We're still battling to make sure students love mathematics, but we never really started with mathematics instruction as a broadening participation effort. We have the privilege now of doing that with computing. So consider who has access right now, how you're going to grow access to computing education, and who gets to use computers to participate in society, and how you're going to grow who understands computing enough so that they can be true participants in our society. And with that, I will say thank you again. I'll pass it along to our next speaker, and I cannot thank you enough for your perseverance and efforts to grow computing education and to ensure that every student in Georgia has a high quality educational experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. We appreciate that. Very sobering words, but inspiring. Like I said, we're making great progress, and we have an opportunity here to move forward. The next session really speaks to what you were just talking about. It's three school systems that have already begun the work, and they can share with us some of their journey, some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges, but also some of their triumphs, and some of the different nuances that they've used in order to add computer science and make sure that all their students have access to it. So that'll be the close of the official summit. The next part, the fireside chat with the other school systems, is really setting us up for our workshop for tomorrow. So thank you, Dr. Dooley, and I'll talk again soon. All right, are the fireside chat folks in the back? Oh, there's Victoria. Hello. And Erin. 1, 2, and one more. 3. There we go. All right. 1, 2, and 3. Well, great afternoon, everybody. Glad you can make it. It's been a great day so far. A lot of really inspiring talks and sessions, and a lot of strong information, but nothing really sells folks on a movement like a good story, right? Like a good anecdotal reflection on what did you do? What have you been through? Now, the reason why you all are on here, just so everybody knows, is that you all have already gone through the implementation workshop, really at different stages. And you all represent very different geographic areas for your school systems. Erin was a part of our first series of workshops that we did with our Includes grant. She is in a very rural area in South Georgia in Thomas County. Victoria was at they hosted us at the last summit and went through the workshop then, so in 2019. Love to hear what progress you've made since 2019. And Trina Reeves at Clayton County, they just went through the workshop, what is it, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? Not that they weren't already doing work, but they just went through the process of really developing that plan and rolling that out. So everybody's at different stages of the development and implementation, and everybody is from different geographic locations. So we get to hear a lot of different perspectives. Let's start with Trina, actually, since you guys are building up steam with your CS program. Can you talk to us a little bit about your journey? About I know that you are relatively new to the Clayton County school system, so tell us a little bit about where you are and where your next steps are.
Yes, so I'm not new to the school system. I've been in Clayton County my whole career, over 20 years, but I am new to this position. So to give you a little background, I was an elementary principal at a STEM certified school, and we have a computer science course for our K-5 students we've had for a couple of years. And I was a part of the Computer Science for Georgia grant we were awarded that grant, and I was a part of the team. And a couple of months after being on the team, I became the director of STEM Innovations. So this became an area of focus for me, and I had a couple of thoughts. Number one, as a former principal, one of the most frustrating things is to try to hire for really hard to fill positions. So in my head, I was thinking, okay, number one, I want to have the computer science endorsement in our district. That was a goal of mine in my head, so that we can support our teachers within our district. The other part was, as I began to really understand the Senate bill and the parameters that surrounded that, wanted to get a team that included teachers, because the original team did not have teachers on it, but I wanted to have all levels as a part of our task force. So I got the job the first day we went on remote last year, March 16th, my first day on this job. But we started switching our task force to include those different levels of people. And we started coming up with a plan. And it was a haphazard plan. You know, we were working on a grant, trying to fulfill the grant requirements of getting the professional development. We did not use it for STEM endorsement. We used it to support the teachers who were already teaching computer science. And we actually had quite a few schools that were implementing some type of computer science, but the various levels of knowledge were just kind of all over the place. So we wanted to support their current initiatives. And then we started writing the computer science endorsement for our district. So I had been going back and forth with Bryan, and he had offered this training, this workshop. And so we got our team together. He came, and it was the best experience because it helped all of our ideas get focused. So we went through the 2-day training. We meet now twice a month. We have a 3, 6, 9, 12, and beyond plan for Clayton County. We're starting to we've added more schools and more classes, and we're putting a huge focus on elementary school as well, because I would personally like to see every K-5 school in Clayton County have a computer science, either computational thinking embedded or a computer science course offered to all students K-5. I've been collaborating with Christy Heath, who's our advanced learning, and Mary Shepard, who's our CTAE director, and the three of us have taken this on as our project. And so we've been plugging along, but we did about a month ago, we got our computer science endorsement approved. So we're very, very excited about that, to be able to offer that within our district and support the teachers and you know, and maybe retain them and keep them, because we're all going to be fighting for the same people. So it's my short story.
Great story, and with a key facet, like you guys have your own endorsement that you build within your system. That's impressive. I think y'all the first system to have the CS endorsement in the system. So that gives you a lot of leverage as far as building your own teacher core.
Yes.
So that's exciting. So we're going to rewind backwards a little bit in time. I think you guys went through the training in 2020. So let's go back to 2019 and hear about Muscogee County and their journey. Victoria, you want to?
Thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm Victoria Thomas. I'm the CTAE director here in Muscogee County, and that's Columbus, Georgia. As Bryan said, we hosted, I'm proud to say, the first CS for Georgia Summit here in Columbus, called CompSciCon back in November 2019, which seems like a million years ago. And since that time, I will say this, and I'm a little jealous when Trina was talking about how her team is meeting every 2 months. We haven't been doing that. However, it's almost like we came together and then we got a mission and then everybody kind of went off in disparate directions, but we're all moving in the right direction, I would say. One of the things that we were working on at the time simultaneously was our eSPLOST, which was voted and passed. And at kind of like the 11th hour, because of Scripps, we added a line item in there in our eSPLOST for all of our elementary schools to get a innovation or CS lab. So that was approved. So now we're in the process. In fact, we met with Bryan a few months ago, I think now, to talk about what does that look like. And it's going to be different for each school because some schools they really want to turn their media center into kind of like their innovation lab, and other schools are like, no, we want to do a different classroom. We would still want our traditional media center. So it's going to be different. But we wanted to know when we got with Bryan, like what are the minimum requirements, or what do we want that innovation lab, wherever it may be physically located, to look like. But I say that to say that we do have a K through 12 plan. Like we want, we know that it needs to build. You can't just pick one area and kind of work on just that area, even though in a way that's kind of what we did before. I want to say even this became more of a movement. We were attacking it in a shotgun approach. I'm the CTAE director, but I was a former business and computer science teacher back when they used to be together. But now business and computer science are separated. But it's always been an interest of mine because I'm not good at it or can't code. But I saw the writing on the wall that it was needed for the future. So our students really needed, before it became a discipline, a standalone discipline, I just felt like anything I can jump on that's going to be adding more technology to our students, I wanted to do that. So before, early on, we had just a bunch of little things happening. We had some robotics happening. We had at our sort of magnet school for the advanced gifted, we had some computer science classes. We had, one teacher over here was really interested in cyber and that kind of thing. So when we built our team for our script training, we brought all those people together so that we could have everybody at the table who had passion. And then we also brought the folks that kind of make the decisions, our superintendent, director of curriculum and those kind of folks, so they could kind of see, look, there's passion, there's commitment within our district. We just need to have a plan and we need support to make sure that it's going to be successful. So basically what we kind of came up with is that we feel like CS needs to begin in the lower grades, of course, and we had a strong push for robotics, and we became a first-class district because we felt like, and we did that before we had scripts, but we put it down on paper and made it a part of the plan. But we felt like kids, when they're young, and we all know this as educators, they need something tactile and something that they can't conceptualize, because that's a higher order of thinking task, and they're not able to do that when they're 5, or young. So we wanted to start off with robotics to kind of get kids interested. We also have a very good partnership with a company, Total Systems Global Payments, and we do Hour of Code in all our schools every year. So we're very committed to that, and we get volunteers from the community from that company, TSYS, to come and assist us with our Hour of Code. So that's our kind of like our K through 5 is just to make sure we have Hour of Code, make sure we have robotics. And we're going to slowly building in those CS labs or innovation labs in the elementary school. When they get to secondary school, that's kind of when I take over more as a CTAE director, being that those are, CTAE is a secondary program. And that's where we get into them being able to take the middle school computer science classes. We have computer science in all but 2 of our middle schools. We have 12 middle schools, and we have computer science being taught in 10 of the 12. So we're really proud about that. And we have robotics in 11 of the 12, and they overlap. So we have some kind of exposure to computer science, in all of our middle schools. And also what Trina mentioned was one of our challenges is just teachers, finding qualified teachers, retaining them. We had one that we put through endorsement, went to another county. That's okay. It's all good. Good for them. We want all kids to succeed, but we have some teachers now that are going to be finishing up their endorsement program, and we have some others that are interested. Of course, we can't get the CS grant again, Bryan. You can only get it one time. So we have to find some other funding sources to try to assist those teachers. I wish we had our own endorsement program. That would be awesome. And I'll probably be contacting you, see how y'all were able to do that, because that would help us out. And then, of course, I'm trying to go in order. And then in high schools, of course, we have computer science at all of our high schools being taught, except for one, which is our fine arts school. We have a school of fine arts, and they don't do computer science at that school. It's they don't really have CTAE, at that school at all. So that's one of the reasons why they don't do that. But I would say that that's our journey. The pandemic has kind of hampered some things in getting together, and we've had other things that have kind of drawn our attention away from this, but it's a passion of mine. It remains to be. And so hopefully when we get back to normal, we can get, maybe we can start meeting twice a month, meeting, more often, and certainly just keep the ball rolling. But that's in a nutshell where we are.
I don't know if you can fit all of that in a nutshell. That was a pretty big shell to house all of that information. But thank you for sharing. And it sounds like you're well on your way to being in compliance with the legislation. You say there are all but 2 middle schools and all but 1 high school. Yeah, you're well down the road. So nice work. And you got some shout outs from your neighboring systems in the chat there. They said your robots programs are awesome. So 2020, 2019, now we're going back to Erin. When did you guys go through the training? Was it 2018 or 2017? I think you're on mute right now. You're muted right now, Erin. I don't know how to unmute you. Coach told us that it was February of 2018. Okay, she's gonna jump off and come right back. I think one of the hallmarks of the Muscogee County experience is the collaborative effort that the whole community put behind this. The fact that they work so closely with Columbus State and TSIS and even their chamber, like you guys have really built a collective that is all supportive of and pushing forward with this computer science movement. Which is evident in the East Plus funds coming back saying that yes, all your elementary schools can get computer science and get a CS lab. That means that there's buy-in at all levels, and that's important for a program. What I really liked about the meeting with Clayton was that it was a lot of different folks there, like the CTAE folks, the science folks, the curriculum folks, the principals, the teachers, the middle school teachers, it was everybody was at the table and they all had something to say, all had something to bring to the conversation. And unfortunately, nobody in Clayton is shy. So they all were very much powerful voices to talk about what they wanted and what they were going to do and how they were going to be supportive of each other. So making sure that all the voices are at the table is essential to making sure that things happen. Especially within a timely fashion. Let's see. Sonia Glasper says, great to hear your story, Victoria. It's a Lego rep. And she's a rock star as well. While we wait for Erin to jump back on, let me ask you a question that came up earlier, and both of you all can chime in on this. There was some talk about the CTSOs, and not just the CTSOs, but also the after-school program. So somebody mentioned robotics. Erin, are you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. So I'll come back to that question.
That's happened to me every time with Hop In. I've had to hop in and hop out and hop back in.
I think they do that on purpose. It's a marketing technique.
I think so. I'm sorry. If you want to continue with what you were talking about.
No, I'll circle back to that because then you can.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018. It feels like a million years ago, but
Coach says it was February of 2018, so it was close to 2017.
Okay, yeah, I knew it was February because I just remembered it was February because it was cold. But okay, so yes, we did go through the script training, but we did already have some CS components in place before that event. And I will say to those of you who are preparing to go through this, it really does allow you to consider what you already have. To codify some of those things and say, acknowledge what you're doing well, put it on paper and decide how to move forward and grow your program. We do have a K-12 computer science initiative here in Thomas County. It is the result of the vision of our previous superintendent. And so that is one thing I always like to say. And if you were in my session earlier, I apologize. I'll probably repeat a lot of the same things, but if your superintendent and your finance director and those gatekeepers for programming in your organization don't understand the value of computer science and believe in it, you're never going to grow your program. And so if you are a tech director or a CS teacher, someone like that, it is very important to develop a strong relationship with those key decision makers in your districts if you want to grow computer science. Because I know that one of my colleagues mentioned like the CS4GA grant. It's only $25,000 and you can only get it one time. And while you can do a lot with that, you cannot sustain a program with that kind of funding. And so your important decision, your people that make the decisions have to understand the importance of CS in order to grow a program. Another thing I want to say that I think is, well, there are three components really. There's the vision, I think, which is so necessary, and your superintendent and your school board and all of those people have to be on board. But also, if you are sort of in charge of your CS program, it is important for you to share that vision as much and as often with as many people as possible. So vision is key. Part of that vision is I think team building. I mentioned this earlier in our rural session, but oftentimes a computer science teacher might be the only computer science teacher in a school. And so it is important for the school district to build relationships across the schools in order to forge those professional learning and collegiate connections that are very important. So, you know, vertical alignment, just having conversations, building opportunities for collaboration with CS teachers across schools is key. Also, along with vision, I think financial commitment, it goes along with it, is also very important. Seeking and applying for grants, using those grant funds in the best way possible to grow your program, and understanding how to sustain work beyond the scope of a grant, as I mentioned as well. I think that flexible scheduling within your district is also very important, especially when it comes to your elementary schools. We have coding and computer science as a part of our specials rotations in our elementary schools, but a lot of districts who have come to visit us say, oh, I don't know that our superintendent or our principal would be on board with adding in a new specials rotation. So I think that flexible scheduling is important, and it is very important to have computer science opportunities for elementary students, because that's how you grow your program. One thing we have learned in our district is the teachers now say, you know, they get students at the beginning of the year every year who know and are able to do so much more than in the past, because we've sort of built and grown this program, and they're exposed to these opportunities in elementary school. So it's just, you know, to students now who are saying 5th or 6th grade, it's just been a part of their schooling for as long as they can remember. And so elementary school CS, programming, coding, robotics, however you can work it in is key. But to get it in elementary school, you have to be flexible. And I also am a huge believer that it should not be an after-school club for your gifted students. It should be a during the school day for all students part of your students' day. I mean, it cannot be something that's reserved for a certain population. So I don't even know what I've forgotten to say, but Bryan, if you want me to elaborate on anything else, let me know.
You said that you had already started some of this work before computer science. Talk about how you aligned your CS plan with your other plans and all of that stuff.
We did get a grant from GOSA, I think it was in 2016 or 2017, for rural computer science initiatives, and we implemented the Project Lead the Way curriculum in our elementary schools and in our middle school. And so that was, and we already had computer science at our high school as well.
You mentioned something, and I want to get everybody's thoughts on this. You said it shouldn't just be an after-school program for your honor students, but what is the value of the after-school programs? Like, do they help to grow your program, your CTSOs, your robotics? I know Muscogee is heavy into the robotics. How effective is that as a mechanism for growing your programs?
I'll go first. We had, exponential growth in our robotics prior to COVID. In 2 years, we grew it from 6 teams in our district to 60 teams in our district in just 2 years. And that was on the backs and kind of like what Erin said. I know if you were in my earlier session, you heard this before, but it was on the back of having experience as a CTAE director with CTSOs. So prior to kind of like CTAE taking under umbrella, there were teachers here, teachers there that had little robotics programs or clubs. When we took it over, we approached it like a CTSO, K through 12 wise. We became a first class school district, and there were targets set for how many teams we would have in at the end of 5 years. So we just promoted it aggressively to the teachers and the principals and said, this is a way to grow interest in STEM and STEAM, and gave them a lot of information about how it helps kids overall, not just in computer science or but just in general, to be a part of something. So I think it helped us, because I saw in the chat there was a question about what have you done for diversity and inclusion, and that was probably our biggest thing that helped with diversity and inclusion, was having a growth in robotics. Now, yes, it is an after school program, but I'll just say this: we had a greater representation from all walks of life, all demographics when we started that. And it was just, I don't know, personally fulfilling for me to see students from the lower socioeconomic schools competing and winning at robotics. Because I personally feel like there are all kinds of kids in all the schools, no matter what color or gender or whatever. And so it unearthed, sort of those kids that are kind of like the ones that maybe aren't into sports and aren't into art or whatever, but they were into robotics or technology, and they didn't have an outlet for it. So by, just expanding their robotics and giving the teachers support, CTAE took that on. We used our local money to pay for the field trips and things that they needed. I mean, these kids needed transportation from one side of town to the other. I mean, we took that on. Also, we got a private donation from a company in town to help when those kids did go out of town, that we could pay for their meals and things like that. So we tried to remove every barrier that we possibly could to make sure that every child could participate who wanted to. We even had robotics practices on Saturdays, and we fed everybody who showed up. Grandma and them, little brothers and sisters, and everything, because we wanted the kids to participate. So, I mean, it was great for us. So and I agree that it shouldn't just be an after school program. It shouldn't just be certainly for the high academic, kind of kids, but it was a great tool for us. And we provided training, and that's the other point we make, for those teachers to kind of say, look, you got the Legos, and we provided those for them through a grant to use with your students after school. But here's some lesson plans straight off of Lego's website that you can use with your science, in your science, class. And here's something you can use during, because my thing was, I want to see you use them from 8 to 3, not just after 3. You know what I mean? So figure out how you can use these robots all day long.
Excellent. Trina, do you have any input on after school programs or CTSOs or?
So that's part of our plan, is to maybe get a better sense of all the different programs. We do know robotics is offered at multiple schools, but that's part of it, is really looking at everything that's going on in every school so that we can plan effectively. So we have a couple of surveys that are scheduled to go out to the community so that we can be a little bit more targeted in our next steps.
Yeah, and that's an important aspect, is being able to have a clear understanding of what's going on in your system. So whether you use a survey mechanism or some sort of a convening or something like that, to be able to really have a clear picture of where you are so that you know where you want to go. We normally start off the implementation workshop by sending out a landscape report that allows you to kind of start to ask those questions internally. Okay, so where are we at with this? And even the workshop itself, going through those rubrics kind of helps you take a look at yourself and say, okay, so are we at a novice level regarding teacher capacity or leadership, or are we at an emerging level? And if we're emerging, then how do we move to the next level? How do we get to become highly developed or something like that? So those are some of the strategies that we encourage. One of the things in the chat, and Sababu, Victoria talked about it a little bit, is what are some strategies you all have implemented to improve equity and inclusion in your CS programs?
Well,
Go ahead.
okay, so I'll go. We're the newbies, so we're still navigating our way. So my first focus was STEM, and I had the same attitude that I've heard Erin and Victoria talk about, the belief that STEM is it doesn't start in CTAE courses when it's in 6th grade. It starts in the elementary level. It starts with kindergarten students. And I feel the same way about special education. So one of the things as we were going through certification for STEM is my low incidence classes, all of my students were participating in the overall STEM program. So that is our goal, is that all students, well, we call it special education. We have a different acronym in Clayton County, but special education, ESO, everybody has equal access. So we have one-to-one for all of our students, but ensuring that all those programs are accessible for everyone. And that teacher training is a huge part of that. So that's kind of where we are.
Okay, yeah, that is the goal. Victoria, Erin, any thoughts?
That made me think when Trina said that I wish we had data on the number of special education students that participated. I know that there were some. I mean, I hate to say that, but you can, when we host like the robotics competitions and things like that, we know that there's students that participate. And then as far as like hour of code and things like that we do in elementary, we know that, we try to have as many students participate as possible, and we know that there are students with special needs that participate, but that's a kind of a one to grow on, I guess, to try to collect that information. But I want to say this because I can imagine sitting in the audience hearing about, oh, you guys, have this money and you got a private donation. That must be nice. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing, because we know that we're a lot of times handcuffed by how we spend our funds because it's grant money and local money and there's rules and all. But I would say to those schools who are looking for private donations and things like that, tell your story when you can, so that people are aware of what you're doing. The way we were able to get the private donation is because of the work that we were doing kind of with the chamber, the presentations that have been given at the school board meetings and things like that. I mean, we're fortunate in Columbus to live in a community where there are a lot of people who have, who are wealthy and like to give back. But they can't give if they don't know. And even though there's not, you might be in a small or rural place where nobody can write you a single check for a big sum of money, but maybe there's people who can give you some money here and there. And like I said, when you're talking about students going on a field trip or things that they might need that you can't normally spend your federal or local money on, it may only be a handful of kids. So that check for $500 will actually go a long way. So just think about ways to tell your story through school board meetings, through Chamber of Commerce presentations. If you're on this call somewhere and you're not a member of your chamber, or you don't have anything to do with the economic development portion of your chamber or economic development authority, make that a goal, because there's jobs in workforce development related to computer science. So that's a place where you can tap into and maybe get some support from the local community and have some funds available that aren't grants and things that have so many restrictions.
Excellent. Before we go to the next question, Erin, did you want to lean in on that one, or you want to wait for this next question? Oh,
I'll wait.
All right. So this one is kind of more of a targeted version of that question. So we're going to continue to dig in. This one is about the accessibility for students. Thinking about the students with special needs. Do you have any thoughts on how to support those in your program? I'm beginning to pull the data on students with disabilities that are participating in computer science courses. So I'll start to have some of that available on our public dashboard once I get some help designing that dashboard. So look for that in the next couple of months. But do you recognize, or do you just, even anecdotally, do you see that students with disabilities perform well in your computer science classes? Are they participating? Do they elect to go into these courses? Are they shying away? What is the representation like? What are your experiences with that group?
So I did mention this in the session earlier today, but I was inspired a few years back by a segment that CBS Sunday Morning did about tech companies hiring young people with autism to work in their programming departments. I don't know if anybody has seen that. I'm sure you can find it with a quick Google search. But, I've said before, our brightest kids sometimes struggle with programming and computer science because they like to get things right the first time. And so sometimes students with special needs are accustomed to having to try things over and over again. And so the discipline lends itself, the kids do well in computer science who are not prone to want to be perfect all the time. And so I just think we have to start our programming by thinking of how can we include everyone. We're doing our students a disservice if we don't begin with that lens of opening the doors to everyone.
Oh, the video is in the link in the chat for you, Erin. Yeah, I think that Junior's put up something during the keynote speech about the walls and what equity means. And I'd never seen that third panel where there was a gate, but everybody could see the game no matter where they were standing. So thinking about something that makes it accessible for everybody, that everybody has the same experience or is able to participate in this experience. And that's important when you are at the outset, when you're at the beginning, when you're developing your programs, to be having those conversations. That's why we're having the summit now, to make sure that we are having these conversations at the outset, so that we don't have to go back and try to retrofit our programs or retrofit our system after the fact and say, oh, we left out these folks. Oh, we forgot about this. We forgot about that. We want to take care of that on the front end. So that's
in addition to students with special needs, we've also seen some ESOL students really thrive in our computer science classes because the programming language is universal.
Very true. Let's see, what time is it? 4:10. Let's see, another question is, and Victoria kind of touched on it a little bit, is about the funding of it. Like, where is the money and how do you spend it? So you get a grant, you get the capacity grant, and you know that that's just a one-time deal. Or you get, at one point we had, the CTAE had a middle school grant that went out, or you get a grant from GOSA, or you get a grant from, the US Ed or somewhere other place. Where are the funding streams? And how do you spend the funding? Like, how do you kind of decide where the money goes? What are your first uses of external funding to start a program?
I can speak to that. I don't know if Trina and Erin are CTAE. I know Trina is not, she mentioned, are CTAE directors. But if there are any CTAE directors on the call, or if familiar with yours, or get to know the one that's in your district, because we have a process with Perkins 5 called the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. And basically, we have stakeholder meetings and we talk about the needs and the gaps in the school district. And what your goal would be is to recognize that the need for computer science is a gap. And so once that's identified as one of your overarching needs, funding can be directed to that. If it's not identified as a need, then your CTAE director's hands are tied as far as allocating any of the funds for that. I'm not as familiar with the federal programs process, but our process mirrors that of the federal program. So we have a comprehensive local needs assessment, a CLNA. They have a CNA, which is not, this doesn't have the L in it, which is a comprehensive needs assessment, but the same process where they identify some needs in whatever the needs are in the district, and that's where they can allocate their funds. And I believe they can use Title IV. And somebody out there probably knows more than I do, can put it in the chat. But that's where some of our money came from. Even though as CTAE director, everybody's like, oh, CTAE has all the money. But we also have all the other programs too, construction and all the rest of them. So they're very expensive. But so we put as much money as we could towards the, of course we can only spend our money on secondary schools. So we got our money for robots for the elementary schools through through federal programs. And then again, Bryan mentioned the grants. We got the CS capacity grant, we got the middle school grant, and then we got private donations. So that's where our funding came from. But I was going to say, get to know your CTAE director, your federal programs director, and see if you can be a part of the stakeholder meetings for the CLNA and the CNA. CLNA is for CTAE and CNA is for federal programs.
I think that building relationships with the right people and also marketing your computer science program funds come available, and when people know you are running a good program and you have a good relationship with those people, I think the doors open to the conversations of what's the need and how and where can we spend these funds. So just as with anything, building relationships with the right stakeholders is very, very, very important. You cannot do CS on an island.
Agreed. I was told, so and going along with what Victoria was saying about the needs, they do a needs assessment for all of the title funds. So whether you're Title I, Title II, Title IV, like they do a needs assessment. And as you said, computer science can be considered a need. So there's money in Title IV-A, for instance, for training teachers. There's money in Title II, there's money in Title I, and those are for specific populations. But along with those assessments comes the ability to use funds to support those populations. So there are some very creative ways to help to work on your program. As we get close to our time, I do want to attend to the fact that we have, and Victoria, you mentioned it, and everybody nodded and said, okay, but everybody's not from the same space. Victoria is a CTAE director. Trina is a STEM coordinator, is that correct?
Director of STEM and Innovation.
Director of STEM and Innovation. And then Erin, what is your title now, Erin? It's the
digital learning coordinator.
Digital learning coordinator, right? So computer science touches a lot of different places. And depending on where you are, the point person for computer science could be any number of different types of people, right? And in order to do it effectively, all of these people should be talking. So I know that Trina talks on a regular basis to her CTAE director. And I know that Victoria works with across her school system to make sure that, the CTAE programs are top heavy. They're middle school, high school, but working with some other partners in your school district allows you to impact what's going on at the elementary school level. And I know Erin has done a lot of vertical planning to make sure that all levels are included. So recognize that computer science spills out and spills over to the entire school and education system, and pull all of those people in to make sure that they feel invested and feel included. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about that as far as you're building your team.
I can speak. I know. So one of the things that part of our team, besides the people that I mentioned earlier, is I'm really excited about the fact that our math and science departments have either gotten grants for computational thinking at the elementary level, elementary, middle, and high school level, but also have provided training for all K-12 with the computational thinking training. And so that has been a huge, interestingly enough, it's caused a lot of interest in teachers to learn more. And for me, I think that's half the battle of really getting my teachers excited, the teachers in Clayton County excited about computer science and wanting to learn more, is half the battle for us. So they have done a great job of incorporating that computational thinking across, subject areas, all 4 subject areas, and K-12. So that's one of the things that we've been working on.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions in the chat as well. One was, what employers or employment associations are supporting your efforts?
Well, one of our major supporters in Muscogee County District is Total Systems / Global Payments. They merged with Global Payments. They don't provide any, and I don't know if the person asked that was talking about financial support. I mean, they don't support us financially, but they give a lot of man hours in terms of being involved in our schools, supporting Hour of Code, doing job shadowing, girls Fireside chat, where it's and I should have mentioned that before. We're talking about efforts to get other groups interested in IT, but we just had a girls Fireside chat, and what that is female executives from the technology space speaking to female students, and we do middle and high, and when it used to be in person, we had to limit it to like I think we did 25 girls per school. But of course, it was unlimited because it was virtual this time. And we get the Chamber of Commerce supports us. Another company, W.C. Bradley, they're the ones that gave us the donation. I'm forgetting somebody. And our local development authority as well, which is closely tied with the chamber, are supportive. We also have speaking of the chamber, we have a strong Partners in Education program that our chamber manages, and they are supportive as well.
Nice, thank you. Next question was, what extracurricular / partner support, if any, is helpful in planning or building out a CS program? I think you guys have been speaking to that quite a bit. But as far as on the front end, what value do they help out with as far as building out your program?
I think I don't know how other districts work, but our after school programs, some of them are run by Boys and Girls Club, and I forget the other group, but Boys and Girls Club, I should have mentioned them. We have a good relationship with them too. We share curriculum with them actually. And when we were doing virtual, like when our school was completely virtual, all our kids had Chromebooks, but we provided the curriculum and information to Boys and Girls Club at large. And I guess they filtered it down to the people that were, because basically when parents still had to work but the kids were virtual, people were going to Boys and Girls Club and doing school through their Chromebook, and we provided information to Boys and Girls Club, so those people that were sort of supervising the kids knew what was going on. So we also did that with some of our robotics and things like that as well, as far as after school support. But I was going to say also, you mentioned, we talked about it before, but the CTSOs in the secondary schools, your FBLA, Skills USA, TSA, particularly can be supportive too, because they have competitions in those areas that students can compete in. So that can help as a beginning, to get people interested.
It's not always about financial support, even though that's always nice to be able to get a check and buy some stuff or pay for some training. But sometimes that also is the people support. Being able to get judges for your competitions, being able to get somebody to come in and talk to your students from the local community, so things like that. And there are some organizations, and we've had some of them during the summit, that are willing to reach out across, like virtually, and reach out across the state and support you. I know that GTRI does will beam some professionals into your classroom that helps to build identity around computer science. I know that TEALS is toying around the idea of having virtual folks to come in and co-teach with your teachers. So a lot of these different models are maybe not right next door to you, but can still be of value to you. I also wanted to mention that since we were talking about some different ways to look at computer science, I put a link in the chat for Georgia Insights. It's the whole child. And if you scroll down on that toolkit, you can see next to challenged is computer science. And then I put a link recently, like the most recent link is a graphic that you can find on that site about how to look at federal programs and funding to support computer science. So that's just a way to think about some of the ways that, Title IV, Title I, Title V can be used in this space. So I think we're winding down to the end. Do you guys have any final comments or thoughts or insights that you'd like to share before this group goes into training tomorrow?
I don't. I do want to echo what Co put in the chat that, through all of our stories, I think there's the message is clear that this is not easy. It's not, you can't turn a key and have a K-12 computer science program overnight. It takes a lot of stakeholder collaboration. It takes a lot of planning, financial support and commitment. So those of you who are just starting the journey, don't feel like you're going to sit down in these next 2 days and, in the next couple of months have a robust program. I just think it takes dedication and a willingness to talk about what works, what didn't work, how can we keep our eyes and focus on this program.
And as a newbie, I sat here and I filled up paper with all the great suggestions from my colleagues because I am new to this process and just excited to be able to see 2 other programs that went through this and are successful. And that definitely gives us some hope for the future because it can be overwhelming when you look at it. And so really trying to take those incremental steps for success. All of our districts are very, we're different districts, but we all have the same goal. And so I'm learning a lot. Thank you, ladies. And Bryan, thank you very much. So just having the right people at the table and keeping and staying focused is key, I think.
Go ahead.
When you're at the beginning of the process, try to get as much information from others as you can. Reach out to other districts. We visited places. I was always constantly on the internet trying to figure out what they were doing, not only in the state of Georgia, but other states as well. You know what I mean? Because, we don't have the answers to everything here either. But, you kind of try to find some things that mirror your situation. And some things that don't, because to be aspirational too, just kind of say, what'll be some great things that we can do, and you'll eventually land, on what's going to work for your district. But don't be afraid to reach out to folks and ask. Like I know Bryan said he'll put you in, people in touch with me. I'm open to any questions anybody has, and we'll be happy to share our story and can get into more of the particulars. But just don't be afraid to seek and gather as much information as you can.
Excellent.
And I think we learned a lot. We have learned a lot in the past year. But one thing that is definitely for sure is that computer science is not a trend. Life would have been a lot different the past year without all the digital tools to keep us connected, to keep us shopping. And so, the people at Zoom right now are very happy with the technology they had already invented and had in place. And so CS is not a trend. I think that has to be our message. It's a way of life.
Definitely. And it's for everyone across the board. So yeah, I think that wraps up today. I look forward to the workshop tomorrow. Thank you all very much for your insights. It's like, again, I continue to learn, and the more I hear, the more I'm able to weave it all together that way when somebody asks, I can like, oh, well, you know, over in Clayton, they're already doing this. And then in Thomas, they've been doing this for a number of times. And then this perfect example of what you're asking about is in Muscogee. So like I'm able to pull from a lot of these excellent examples and efforts. So, and I think the more we talk to each other, the better we all get. So thank you all for sharing. And thank you all for attending, everybody. Good night. If you're coming tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. If not, I'll see you next year.